Stuff means stuff. All stuff means stuff. Some of that meaning is discovered by people as we look into it and understand the inherent intrinsic meaning that's built into things in the natural world. Some of that meaning is discovered or created or inflicted. Some of that meaning is encountered as we see the world through other people's eyes. I mean, understanding the meanings they assign to things, the meanings that other people see in things is a big part of what empathy is, right? But everything means something. Stuff means stuff. Locations also means something. And we could do the exercise again. We've done it before. I could throw out a location and you could be like, oh yeah, that immediately conjures a set of meanings for me. Alabama, the Bay Area of San Francisco, the Australian outback, Mosul, Iraq. You see, all of those locations conjure something for you. Well, the same is true of the people who came before us in the ancient world. And sometimes one little word, one little location place in the text can be enough for us to chase down the rabbit trail and understand how the original audience would have received a text better by understanding the associations there. Now, in this particular case, in Matthew 27, Matthew did not have to give us a detail about where a character who's about to appear on screen was from, but he did. Why? That parchment space is prime real estate. It's limited. This is carefully edited on his part. Why is he giving us this detail? What might we be able to draw from this? What associations might have been present for the original audience? Here's what we're looking at. Jesus is being brutalized. He's being treated horribly by these executioners after being treated horribly by the Jewish leadership and the crowd, and after being beat up and spit on and having a crown of thorns jammed onto his head. They finally take the mock regal robe off of him, put him back in the clothes he's been wearing for however many days. And now they are marching him up the hill. They're marching him to the place of the skull, the place where he's going to be crucified, where he's ultimately going to meet his death. Now, according to Roman tradition, the person who's being crucified, they get to carry the crossbeam of their cross. It's kind of that walk of shame thing. Again, I don't recommend that you watch any program ever on television because I don't want to be responsible for that. But if you happen to have watched Game of Thrones, which I do not recommend, there is one of the all-time legendary scenes in the history of television where somebody has to do this walk of shame. In that scene, George R.R. Martin, who wrote the books that inspired the show, is clearly drawing on the shame and humiliation that is described in this text that Jesus went through. And again, don't go looking for the scene. I don't even know why I tell you these things. Please don't watch anything. But in this scene, Jesus is supposed to be carrying the crossbeam for his cross, and he can't. It's too much. They went a little too far. They overly beat up on him. They hit him in the head too many times with that staff. He got flogged too hard. Jesus was clearly not a man of excess. He doesn't seem like the kind of guy who would have overly indulged in things. We don't get the impression that he put tons of energy into developing a massive masculine physique that could take a whole lot of punishment and dish out some punishment right back. I think his physique, stuff means stuff, would have matched his agenda, which seems to have been crystal clear to him from the very beginning. I imagine he probably nurtured a physique that was meant to die, not a physique that was meant to communicate, I'm here to do battle. I'm here to lead people into open warfare against Rome. So that flogging and the other abuse that he took, apparently it was too much, because in Matthew 27:32, it says, as they were going out, they met a man from Cyrene named Simon, and they forced him to carry the cross. Now, yesterday I was no joking around. I decided there was going to be no joking around. Today and tomorrow, maybe a teeny tiny bit more joking around. Because we got to put ourselves in the shoes of this bystander for a minute. We got to step away from the point of view character being Jesus, and let's make the point of view character this Simon of Cyrene for just a minute. This dude is from modern day Libya, or what at the time would have been the far western reaches of what is historical Egypt, right where the lines are kind of blurred with what's left of the far eastern reaches of what was historically Carthage. More on all of that in just a minute. He looked like a foreigner. People from this region might have had the lighter North African skin, but the original sources indicate that most people from Cyrene, and we actually have depictions of them, look more like a modern-day sub-Saharan African today, as people in that area would have been more likely to look before the Arab invasions, the Muslim invasions of the 7th and 8th centuries when they really pushed across North Africa. My point is, and I don't understand why we always tiptoe around this so much right now. We just don't know how to talk to each other about anything, including our differences, but I'm just going to stumble through it like a ham-fisted clown. My point is the guy was almost surely a black dude. Remember, racial slavery is a relatively recent historical invention, and so the fact that this guy's black would have no bearing on his standing as a free man or a slave in the Roman Empire at this time. In fact, it's more likely that he probably would have enjoyed some sort of privilege because of a series of deals that were negotiated after the Punic Wars. Again, more on all of that in just a minute. Probably this Simon of Cyrene is a black dude who's got a decent amount of money, who's descended from a family that is mingled between North Africans and historical Greeks culturally and maybe even ethnically. And he's probably in Jerusalem, one of the 5 great hubs of the Mediterranean world, doing business. Jesus' crucifixion route would have taken him right through places where all kinds of foreigners would have been doing business. I don't think they picked out Simon the Cyrene to carry Jesus' crossbeam of his cross because he might have been a black guy. I think they picked him out because he was standing in the wrong place at the wrong time, probably wasn't in Jerusalem a lot, and probably everybody else saw it coming. The locals were like, ooh, you do not want to be standing there right now. They're going to pick somebody. This crucifixion victim, he does not look healthy. I don't think he's getting that beam all the way up this hill. You know what? Let's take an early break for a meal right now, and let's just come back after this crucifixion parade is done. I bet a whole lot of people scattered like rats and watched from a safe distance where they wouldn't get picked out by the execution squad to carry this crossbeam. Simon the Cyrene probably didn't know those local rhythms. He's probably just standing right there doing whatever he's doing. And as has probably happened to all of us at one point or another, he didn't get while the getting was good. And as a result, he gets singled out, and he does get, well, I guess you would say burdened with this thing. But come on, consider the last 2,000 years of history. How many other people who were there on that day do we know by name? What do we really have here? Peter, John, like we know they were mingling around the crowd. You got Mary and Mary, they were there. You got Pilate. You got Pilate's wife. We have guesses about her name. There's some extra biblical tradition that suggests there's a lady named Veronica who was around this situation. She's depicted in the Catholic Stations of the Cross that you see laid out in the ambulatory around the outside of Catholic churches. But again, not a biblical character, so she might have been there. There might have been a lady by that name who was there. Who else we got? Caiaphas and Annas. They were there. You see what I'm driving at? And Simon of Cyrene, a guy who hasn't been on camera one bit to this point, a guy who theoretically should have just lived and died in the 1st century AD and been buried with his fathers. And not only would we not know his name, but probably nobody would even know where Cyrenaica is, or almost nobody, except history nerds would even know. I mean, the reason most people probably know that there's a place called Cyrene at all, or Cyrenaica, is because of Simon of Cyrene. So there's a really interesting inversion that is happening here. What looks like he is being saddled with this horrible burden is actually him participating in the redemption of all humankind. Think about that. A black dude from North Africa picked out of nowhere in the middle of a crowd. This is most certainly not a Jew. This is most certainly a Gentile, is going to help the King of Kings make his way up this hill to his effectively coronation. Yeah, I know it looks like an execution, and by human standards in all measurable senses, that's what it is. But this is the moment where he's lifted up, even if it's on a mock throne. He's lifted up in front of everybody, and this is where the sins of humanity are dealt with and resolved, transferred from people who cannot possibly pay the cost of their debt of sin to one, well, the only one who could possibly pay it. And Simon of Cyrene is standing in the, you could say, wrong place at the wrong time. I'm sure he thought that at the moment, but right place at the right time from a historical perspective to play this remarkable role in the unfolding of these final steps of Jesus in his physical earthly life before his death. And I stress again the fact that he is not a Jew and that he is a distant outsider Gentile is a very fascinating detail as well. We got to talk a lot more about this guy because I think there are a ton of layers here and we've just started to peel them back. More on Simon of Cyrene next time around. You know what's awesome? Getting to the first part of the month and going over the Patreon side of things, just make sure everything's working all right. And seeing that a bunch of people signed up. What a kind thing for you to do. Thank you. I saw all of your names. I tried to get everybody a note to express my gratitude for you jumping in. I know at the beginning of the month, there's always a handful of you who need to tap out on the Patreon support thing. I sound like a broken record, but it's just really important that you hear it from me. That is absolutely cool. Thank you forever supporting this in any way. That is so above and beyond and so kind. And I thank you and my family thanks you. Whether you are on the way out with that right now or on the way in, you've been such an encouragement to me. I really, really appreciate it. And I really love doing this. And you're why I get to. So thank you. I'm Matt. This is the 10-Minute Bible Hour podcast. Let's do this again soon.